All right, let's talk about exponential growth. Exponential growth is a kind of growth that's not just one that gets faster and faster, but specifically, mathematically, it is defined as a type of growth which follows an exponential function. Now, an easier way of checking whether something is exponential or not is to ask how long does it take a quantity to double, and then double again, and then double again. And each time it doubles, it should be the same amount of time. Now, let's look at what that means in terms of how much of that quantity is left after a certain amount of time. I'm going to take some papers here that a colleague of mine was thoughtful enough to put in the recycling bin in this room. Right now I have two of these just to speed the process a little bit. I'm going to fold them so it's easier to tear them and then do a hash job of ripping them in two. So now I have 4 pieces. So I started with 2, now I have 4, now I'm going to make 8. And after 8, I'm going to double it and rip it again and get 16. And each time I do this, of course, it gets harder and harder to rip them apart. I now have 16, I'm going to make 32, it's starting to get towards my limit. And if I do it again to make 64, I really can't. So I'm going to switch to an easier kind of paper to do that kind of ripping with, newsprint here. And so I'm starting with 16 sheets here together, which means that if I unfold this, Sudoku. If I unfold this, I now have 16 sheets of paper. So easy enough to get to 32. I rip it like this, rather crudely. I now have 32 sheets. If I can rip it again, I'm going to get 64. Oh yeah, that's getting hard. And then to rip it again, I would get 128. So I'll start with this half here. Can I do it? 128. Now, a typical textbook is several hundred pages, and each of those pages is double-sided. So take the number of pages in your book, divide by 2, and that's how many sheets you'd have to rip apart. But let me just remind you, as I have this exponential growth, it takes about the same amount of time to rip each part of each set of papers. So I'm doubling in the same amount of time. I went from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, and I would continue to 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. It would take me just 10 sets of ripping to wind up with a pile of papers that's 1,000 sheets thick. That's the power of exponential growth.